Okay, so today we are going to do a bit of an academic exercise in the Twin Otter. We are at Santa Barbara, and I've created this entirely fictional weather system where we can't really see much. There's this really thick fog that's several thousand feet deep, so we won't be climbing out of it. And it means we can't really see anything on the ground, and we're going to do this to prove that we can fly blind. And we're going to just use the radios to navigate. So first things first, let's get in the aeroplane and get it started up. So power on, and then move the fuel mixtures to on. Oops, I've lost the mouse because there's a bug in Flight Simulator sometimes. There we go. We're going to move the mixtures, or sorry, the propellers to about 90%. We're going to make sure the throttle throws are good, and they are. We're going to go and turn on the generators. We're going to go and turn on the boost pumps. Oops, wrong way. And then we are going to turn over the engines. So right engine first. See the engine starting out there. It's all good. Left engine. Okay, everything has come alive in the cockpit. So first things first, let's move the heading bug to 70 degrees, which is the takeoff runway direction. So we're just doing that now. We are going to be flying heading mode on the autopilot, but we won't program anything else just yet, because we will go to altitude hold mode after engaging the autopilot. So we're going to climb out by hand, just using the instruments. We'll be using the attitude indicator and the airspeed and the vertical speed. Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to taxi, except we need some lights on, I guess, so other people can not see us in the fog, in our completely artificial movie style fog. Fasten seatbelt sign, put the pitot heat on, and I think we're pretty much there. So okay, so obviously the pneumatic low pressure will disappear as soon as we rev the engines up. So let's just check the levers overhead, they all look good. So we are going to come off the parking brake. We'll start rolling immediately, a full lock on the nose wheel, spin the aircraft round, and we go out towards runway 07 at Santa Barbara. So we are going to fly an instrument, or a fully instrument pattern using VORs to navigate. So it shouldn't be too difficult. So we're going to roll out onto this runway, and then we'll turn off of it pretty sharpish onto the taxiway for runway 07. So we'll get the flaps ready for takeoff. 20 degrees on the flaps, you can see the flaps are travelling, which is good. Here comes the taxiway, which we will take to get down to runway 07. I'll just make sure we're on the right path. If we look on the map, yeah, we can see we're going down here. Just to make this more fun now, we are going to switch off our positions so we don't know where we are anymore. So we can't cheat. Okay, so welcome to very low visibility, kind of flying blind. We are flying blind today. We are going to be using VOR stations to navigate. Okay, we don't need a very long takeoff roll with this aircraft, so let's come round onto the runway. Oh look, there's a luminous aeroplane in the background there. No idea why that's happening, it must be a bug. So you can see runway directions, we're on runway 07, it lines up with 70 degrees. I think it's actually 75 degrees, but that doesn't make a huge amount of difference to us. So we're accelerating, coming up through 80 knots, and we gently pull up on the stick, and we're in the air. And we don't get to see anything from now on out of the windscreen, which is really helpful. So we're just going to climb out, watching the instruments. We've got the attitude indicator for good reference. We've got the compass. We've got the indicated airspeed, so we can start to raise the flaps now. We can pull the throttles back to about 90%. That'll be good. And we're accelerating, and we're still climbing gently, 500 feet a minute. Just looking to trim the aeroplane out. And let's engage the autopilot. So it's going to hold the heading. That's all it's doing at the moment. It's not doing anything about the altitude we're at. So we're coming up to 1,000 feet. So let's give it a target, shall we? So let's go for 2,500 feet, please. And we want to do that at a vertical speed of 1,000 feet a minute. Oops, 1,000 feet a minute. Okay, so the plane is now climbing with a vertical speed of 1,000 feet a minute until it gets to... Oh, it's lost the setting. It's because I pressed the button twice, isn't it? There we go. Now it's climbing for 2,500 feet at 1,000 feet a minute. And it's saying terrain because there is a hill below us, not that we can see anything. So we're not going to worry too much about that. Okay, so we have been flying steadily away on this route of 70 degrees across here. We are in heading mode, so we're going to spin the heading around over here to the reciprocal. So we want 250 degrees. So we're going to fly away from where we were, which is fine. This nav instrument is like a combined CDI. It's like the manual version of the thing you see in the G1000 at the bottom of the screen. It's got a combined glide slope and localizer and CDI and compass rose. It does it all in one. It's very clever. Okay, so we're still turning towards 250 degrees. We're doing 160 knots, so we're actually whistling along really quite quickly. And we're at 2,500 feet now. So let's pull the engines back to about 50%. Keep an eye on the speed. We don't want to get too slow. But there again, we don't want to be going along too fast. Okay. So, how do we know where we are? Well, if you notice, so we know we flew out this way and we've turned, and now we're flying back this way, but we don't know where we are. So if we look out on this map, there are 2 VOR stations, and we can use both to do something rather clever. So if we put 114.90 into the VOR radio, so if we go and look over here on the GPS, ignore that we appear over here. 114.90. So we need to press the push CV button, which puts the focus on VLOC, which is the VOR radio. So we want 114.90. We switch that to active, and now this instrument is showing the results of that. Now if we move the CDI marker, I don't know if we can press it. No, we can't. We can only turn it, and because of the way Flight Sim now works, this is going to take quite some time to do. We want to know the direction from. At the moment this is reading the direction to, so that the angle to the VOR from us. We want the angle from the VOR to us. So we keep spinning it until the white arrow flips over. There it goes. When the needle is in the middle, which will happen very soon, so the angle from the VOR to us is about 175 degrees. So if we draw a line on the map, measure distance at 175, at the time we did it, we're somewhere along that line. Yeah, but going this way. So there's another VOR over here, 113.80. So we'll quickly go and do this. Obviously, if you organise this properly, you can use two different VORs, two different nav radios to do it. So 113.80. So 113.80. We switch it to become active. We go and look over here, and we spin this quickly around. Oh, wrong way. We want the from direction. So again, this is where the problem of not being able to spin the knobs quickly becomes a major hindrance in Flight Simulator. So it's going to be about 105 degrees. So if we go on here and measure distance, 105 degrees, so 105-ish. So we had turned and come back, and we were somewhere in this neighbourhood. Yeah, which makes total sense. You know, if we had flown out in a dead straight line, done a constant radius turn, we are somewhere in this neighbourhood. So we're going to carry on, and we'll keep measuring our distance, knowing that we're probably somewhere on this line. But then we can just keep measuring this angle, so we could know that we want to turn back into the runway maybe when the distance from that VOR to us is about 140 degrees. So if we keep checking this, we're already at 115. So if we turn this to where we know we want to catch up with it, we just need to wait now for the needle to fall in. If we want to see where we are right now, we just line the needle up. But if we put this on 140, that's the point where we want to know about it. We just need to keep half an eye on this to know where we are. And we're going to try and ignore that there's a GPS screen over there where we can see exactly where we are. So this is the old world versus the new world. So we keep trundling along. When this crosses into the middle, we're about here, and we turn back around and come back into the runway. So we're going to drop back down to 2,000 feet because we want to make sure we come in from underneath the ILS. So we set our target altitude for 2,000 feet, and we then go and choose the vertical speed to get there. So we're coming down at 1,000 feet a minute until we get to 2,000 feet. So you can see the indicated altitude is coming down, vertical speed is at 1,000 feet a minute. Speed is obviously creeping up because we are going downhill. This needle hasn't come in yet. We can see where we are though, it's getting closer. We're now at 125 degrees. We want it to be at 140. So we can find out where that is if we go and measure 125. Sorry, we're over here, aren't we? So when I did that, we were somewhere here. So we're just carrying on until this needle sweeps in. When the needle sweeps into the middle, we will go and retune the nav radio to be the ILS frequency. Here it comes. You can see the needle coming. So we're getting closer to this point where we wanted to start turning. We'll fly through it for a little way. We should have yep, we've leveled out at 2,000 feet now, so we've gone back to altitude hold mode, which happens automatically when you get to your target altitude. So the idea here is we're going to, once we fly through the point in the sky we wanted to be at, we will do a right turn back towards the runway, and we will tune the ILS frequency, which will not only give us a localizer reading on the CDI, the course deviation indicator, giving us our lateral position, it will also give us our vertical position via the glide slope, which an ILS gives you that a VOR station does not. Okay, so we've just crossed through the point where we think we're kind of somewhere here. So let's tune nav1 now to 110.30. So we look over here and we change the frequency to 110.30, and we switch that to be the active frequency. So this has obviously changed the reading on here completely, and we're going to turn the omni-bearing selector, the green arrow, to the runway direction, which was 70 degrees. Now we know we are flying the opposite direction than the runway. So there you go. We'll just check that. The ILS is 75 degrees, I tell a lie. So there you go. That should be 75 degrees, which it is now. So if we do a right turn now, just by rolling the heading, we should come back towards the course to the runway. And if we are early or late on that turn, we'll be able to see it on the course deviation indicator. We'll be to the left or the right of the green line. So we turn it to 75. When we get closer to the runway, you will see some markers appear on either side of the nav instrument that reflect the glide slope, because remember, this is an ILS frequency, it's not just a VOR station. Okay, so we're still off to the right. So in other words, we're somewhere here. We're not far enough that way, which is what the needle is reflecting. So what we can do is change our heading to intercept the line. So let's go to 50 degrees. So we're intercepting the center line of the runway. So this line should start to sweep in. We could maybe go a bit more, go 10 degrees more. So we're going to turn to 40 degrees. And we can always turn back to 75 as soon as the needle starts to come in. And you can just see the markers coming in for the glide slope, which is perfect. So outside we can still see absolutely nothing, which is great for our academic exercise. We're in this mysterious fog. And we're just flying in. So you may have seen these needles floating around on various aircraft on the attitude indicator and wondered what they are. They're called the flight director. And the flight director is a computer system that, given the instruction you're trying to set in terms of the course or what the CDI is showing, or the heading you have set, they are what would inform the autopilot what to do. Yeah? So an autopilot and a flight management system have two parts to them, and the flight director is basically figuring out what the aeroplane needs to do to achieve the course it needs to go on. And then the autopilot just blindly follows what the flight director tells it. Yeah, so it's two systems. The autopilot does what it's told. The flight director figures out what to do. And these needles show you what the flight director is wanting you to do in terms of rolling left or right or pitching up and down. Here comes the direction of the runway, so we turn right now to 75 degrees. We may be a little bit late with that. We'll see. It's going to be pretty good actually. So we're now on the runway centre line and we've gone slightly above the glide slope. So we're going to come off the autopilot and dip down to get below it again. And we're going to come off the throttle. And now we are below it, we can engage approach mode. So the autopilot is now going to follow the glide slope down to the runway for us. Or at least that's the plan. So all we have to do now is keep an eye on airspeed. How's it doing? Has this disengaged itself? Yes, it has, hasn't it? Yeah, it's not going to capture from here. Okay, let me take over. Humans are actually pretty good at this. I forgot to engage the autopilot again, so we're just dropping some height and getting ourselves back on. The thing is, a human can react a lot more quickly than the gyro can. So we're keeping an eye on the height. We're still at a good height, so just removing the trim that the autopilot started winding in, which was a bit of a mistake on its part. Okay, so now we are below the glide slope again. Let's go for approach mode and engage. And it should, if we got it in the ballpark, without it having to catch up too much, it should be good. I'm having to give the aircraft enough power to do what the autopilot wants. So it's trying to move the nose around, but obviously it's not controlling the throttle, which is why we've got a stall warning. It wanted to pitch up quite dramatically, so I pushed the throttles forwards to give myself some speed. There we go. We're good now. So I'm keeping the airspeed in the right ballpark so the autopilot doesn't get us into trouble. So autopilot is still engaged, approach mode is engaged, and it's doing its best to re-center on both the localizer and the glide slope. We're down to 500 feet. And the advantage of letting the autopilot do this is we can look out over the front and we can watch what happens. So we're going quite fast, so I'm going to start coming off the throttle. And hopefully, if the ILS does line up with the runway, we'll see the ground appear right in front of us with a nice runway, having done an absolutely blind approach. So hopefully we've got a runway smack bang in front of us. Notice it took some time for the autopilot in approach mode to line itself up. It's because it's quite slow reacting, which is why I said we got involved. So we're getting the stall warning. And can we see the runway? There's the runway lights right in front of us. How's that then? So we come off the autopilot and we just land the plane nice and gently.
40, 30, 20, 10,
bit of a crosswind, isn't there? And there's our glow-in-the-dark aeroplane friend over there. So there you go. So it was actually quite good that we had that mishap on approach where I had to take over, because it shows where a human beats an autopilot, is quick reactions and being able to force the aeroplane into a situation you want it to be in. And it also shows why training is important, because I was too late getting on the throttle when the autopilot wanted to pitch nose up. So it really, you know, means you have to be on top of predicting what the aeroplane's going to try and do and being able to react to help it achieve what it wants to do. So there's always something to learn every time you do one of these things, and in a way having small mistakes happen is even better, because you learn every time. If everything went swimmingly, you wouldn't ever learn anything. It's only, you know, when things go wrong that you really learn, and that's what simulators are so great for. You know, in the real world, when the captains and stuff are flying on the big commercial simulators, they're having the kitchen sink thrown at them, typically, you know, to see how they react and to see if they react in line with the rulebook or the operating procedures of the airline. Okay, let's go and cut the engines. So we'll starve them of fuel. Pull the propellers back. And we can put them completely to feathered over here. And what else do we have to do? There's the fuel pumps, there's the generators. Oops. Off. Turn all the lights back off. Turn the pitot heat back off. And then the master power switches, and that's pretty much it. So there you go. A quick flight in the Twin Otter in complete blind conditions, using a bit of VOR navigation, a little bit of ILS, and a little bit of disaster recovery on approach. So hopefully that was interesting, and I'll see you all again soon.